Skyrim is a land defined by conflict. It is a place where mountains echo with the cries of the past, and every ruin carries the memory of another war. But among all the battles that have scarred this frozen province, none are as diverse or as complicated as the Stormcloak Rebellion. To some, the Stormcloaks are patriots, heroes fighting to free their homeland from the iron grip of the Empire. To others, they are zealots, a band of narrow-minded rebels clinging to an ancient idea of Nord supremacy that has no place in the modern world. And at the centre of this conflict stands one man, Ulfric Stormcloak, Jarl of Windhelm, a warrior, a Thuum wielder and a symbol of rebellion. Yet his cause and the movement that bears his name is not as simple as freedom versus oppression. It is a story woven from politics, faith, pride and tragedy. This is the curious case of the Stormcloaks, a rebellion that claims to fight for Skyrim's soul, but may just as easily be tearing it apart. To understand the Stormcloaks, one must first understand the empire they rebel against. By the time of the Elder Scrolls Skyrim, the once mighty Septim Empire has withered into a shell of its former self. Decades of war with the Dominion, the Thalmor, have drained its strength. The signing of the White Gold Concordat, a humiliating peace treaty, forced the Empire to outlaw the worship of Talos, the divine hero god of mankind and the patron deity of the Nords. For Skyrim, this was sacrilege. Talos was no distant god to them. He was Tiber Septim, a Nord who rose to godhood, a conqueror who unified Tamriel. To forbid his worship was to deny Nord history, their faith and their very identity. The Empire's compliance with the Concordat struck the Nords like a betrayal, and from that betrayal a rebellion was born. Every rebellion needs a leader, and the Stormcloaks found theirs in Ulfric Stormcloak, Jarl of Windhelm. A veteran of the Great War, Ulfric was captured by the Thalmor and imprisoned for years. When he returned, he brought with him both wisdom and wounds, and a burning conviction that Skyrim should never kneel again. To many, Ulfric embodies the ideal Nord, proud, fearless, unyielding. He speaks with the weight of tradition and the fury of the gods. His mastery of the Thuum, the ancient voice, lends him with the aura of the legend, a man who wields the same power as the heroes of old. But Ulfric's story is not so clean. His use of the Thuum to kill the High King in single combat divided the land. Some call it a fair duel, an honourable challenge rooted into ancient Nord customs. Others call it murder, a political assassination masked by tradition. Even among his allies, Ulfric's motives are questioned. Does he truly fight for Skyrim's freedom or for his own crown? Is he a liberator or an opportunist? That ambiguity is the essence of the Stormcloak Rebellion, noble in word but murky in action. The Stormcloak cause begins and ends in Windhelm, the oldest city in Skyrim and Ulfric's seat of power. Windhelm is more than a stronghold. It's a symbol. Its ancient walls date back to the first great hero of the Nords. It is cold, proud, and built from stone that remembers every war fought upon it. And yet, for all of its history, Windhelm is also a city divided. Inside its walls, Dunmer refugees crowd the Grey Quarter, living in poverty and resentment. The Argonians are kept outside the gates entirely. Racism and mistrust fester in the alleys, whispered behind tankards of mead. This is the paradox of the Stormcloaks, a movement that cries for freedom, yet often denies it to others. Ulfric speaks of Skyrim for the Nords, but Skyrim is not just Nords. It is also Elves, Argonians, Bretons, and countless others who call it home. In fighting to preserve his people's heritage, Ulfric risks repeating the very oppression he claims to resist. Windhelm, in all of its cold beauty and ugliness, mirrors the rebellion perfectly, noble at its core but surrounded by shadows. The Stormcloak's banner, Blue, marked with a bear, is a symbol of defiance. It flies above camps scattered across the tundra and mountains, a sign that the old Nord spirit refuses to die. To the common people, it represents pride, a chance to stand against an empire that has forgotten them. Farmers, hunters, and soldiers alike rally beneath it, seeing themselves not as rebels, but as guardians of Skyrim's soul. But that same banner also divides families. Brothers join opposite sides of the war. Cities like Whiterun are torn between loyalty and neutrality. Jarls must choose whether to honour the Empire or their heritage. The Stormcloak blue is not just the colour of rebellion, it's the colour of conflict, of frozen loyalty, of a nation uncertain whether it's fighting for freedom or fracturing itself beyond repair. Perhaps the greatest irony of the Stormcloak Rebellion is that, in trying to destroy the Thalmor's influence, they may just be strengthening it. Within the secret files of the Thalmor embassy lies a chilling truth. Ulfric Stormcloak was once their prisoner, and their pawn. They see his rebellion as useful, a means to weaken both Skyrim and the Empire so neither can stand against the Dominion when the next war comes. In other words, the Thalmor win no matter who loses. If the Stormcloaks succeed, Skyrim becomes a divided, isolated nation ripe for conquest. If they fail, the Empire emerges even more dependent on the Thalmor to maintain peace. It's a masterstroke of manipulation, and Ulfric, despite his pride, plays directly into their hands. This revelation transforms the rebellion from a story of independence to one of tragic irony. The Stormcloaks fight for freedom, but in doing so, they may be ensuring their own enslavement. At the heart of the Stormcloak cause lies religion, the worship of Talos, the ninth divine. For the Nords, Talos is more than a god. He is the living proof that men can ascend to divinity, that courage and will can challenge the power of gods themselves. His worship is an act of defiance, a reminder that men need not bow before Aldmeri, Dominion, or their cold, immortal arrogance. When the Empire outlawed Talos worship under the White Gold Concordat, it didn't just sign a treaty, it shattered the faith of an entire race of people. Stormcloaks carry that wound like a banner. In every prayer whispered beneath Windhelm's frozen statues, in every rallying cry shouted across battlefields, Talos is invoked as both patron and martyr. But here again lies contradiction. The Stormcloaks claim to fight for the right to worship freely. Yet within their ranks, non-Nords often find themselves unwelcome. The question remains, is the rebellion truly about faith, or about who is deemed worthy of it? Every war in Skyrim has its price, and the Stormcloak Rebellion is no exception. Villages burn, families scatter, cities that once traded freely now send spies and soldiers instead of caravans. The roads between Whiterun and Windhelm, once travelled by merchants, now run red with blood. Even the dragons, ancient apocalyptic beings, return amid this chaos, almost as if the gods themselves have judged Skyrim's pride. For all of their courage, the Stormcloaks do not grasp the full cost of their rebellion. A free Skyrim divided and weakened may not survive the storm to come. And yet, to the true believers, that cost is worth paying. Better to die a free Nord than live as an imperial slave. It is that conviction, both admirable and terrifying, that gives the Stormcloaks' cause its power. To understand the Stormcloaks' flaws, one must also understand their enemy. The Imperial Legion, led by General Tullius, sees the rebellion as reckless. To them, Skyrim's independence would doom not just the province, but the entire continent. By weakening the united front against the Dominion, Tullius himself respects Nord bravery, but views Ulfric as short-sighted, a man willing to burn the world for pride. And he is not entirely wrong. The Empire's argument is simple: peace now, strength later. Skyrim alone cannot stand against the Dominion, only a united Empire can. Thus, the war becomes not one of good versus evil, but of ideals. Freedom versus unity, pride versus pragmatism. Both sides are right and both sides are wrong. This moral ambiguity is what makes the Stormcloaks so fascinating. They are neither heroes nor villains, but men caught between history and destiny. So what makes the Stormcloaks such a curious case in Skyrim's history? It is their paradoxical nature. They are both noble and flawed, heroic and hypocritical, honourable and blind. They fight for freedom, yet often deny it to others. They claim to defend their gods, yet risk empowering their enemies. They invoke ancient honour, yet wage a modern war of pride and blood. And perhaps that is what makes them so human. The Stormcloaks are not caricatures of good or evil. They are reflections of the player, of every person who has ever fought for something righteous but compromised in the process. Their story reminds us that rebellion is never clean, that heroism often carries a cost, and that the line between liberation and destruction is perilously thin. In Skyrim, where dragons rise and empires fall, the Stormcloak rebellion endures not as a victory or defeat, but as a question, one the Nords and the player must answer for themselves. When the war is over, when the banners are torn and the snow covers the graves, the Stormcloaks' camps still linger, quiet, abandoned, but not forgotten. Their blue flags fade in the cold wind, their mead barrels lie empty, but their voices remain in the songs of the people. Perhaps, in the end, that is their true legacy, not the cities they conquered or lost, but the spirit they rekindled. The Stormcloaks remind Skyrim that freedom, for all its cost, is worth remembering, that even flawed men can fight for something greater than themselves. And as the snow falls on Windhelm's ancient walls, one truth endures. Skyrim may not need the Stormcloaks anymore, but it will always still remember them.